Maybe. Like, I that's not necessarily what I'm envisioning. Like, I have this, like, in my head, there's, like, 5 to 6 hot dogs in a tube about 10 inches high.
Sure.
Just, that's how they're sold.
Each
like,
one
you
with a
go
different
into the
filling.
cooler. Yeah, they're just there. Like, they're not individually wrapped. They're you know, like, vacuum sealed inside and whatnot. Stay fresh that way. But they're just in there.
So I can take them out and cook them?
Yeah, exactly. But they are filled with some kind of mystery thing.
I mean, we already have that. Like, they're just not... Like, the tube, then, is irrelevant.
Right. I'm just
Well,
saying,
the tube's the cool thing. The tube makes it cool.
Is that a thing you could convince people to do, is buy food? Like, aside from the mystery-filled hot dog idea, could you convince the general public to switch to a tube-based packaging system for food?
I mean, in some ways it might be really efficient for certain things and really inefficient for others. So I feel like that's why we have different packaging as it is.
But I think
so you would have to market the idea as not all foods come in tubes, but as to appropriate foods.
But all tubular foods come in tubes.
Yes, all tubular foods: pickles, cucumbers, hot dogs, sausages.
No, I meant tubular isn't cool. We're not talking about tube-shaped foods. That's our marketing.
I mean,
we would have slayed this in the 80s. Be fucking rich. 5 podcasts. We'd be bought out by Spotify by now.
next, well, I don't know, because I won't ever get the raw audio. Brian, next time I'm going to start timing the intervals between which you sometimes speak, because I'm pretty sure, like, my thesis is the longer it is in between comments, the more your desire for us to shut up grows.
There's a bit of that. I originally wrote down a time code of 29 minutes that we were going to start, and it's now 35. So this is 6 minutes of tube talk.
Well, I was going to suggest that too. We should track, like, some, because this happens quite often. Brian's like, all right, we're about to
Can we name
start.
this stream Tube Talk now instead?
Listen to my tube talk.
I actually prefer that. Tube Talk
Way better
uncut.
than TED Talk.
Tube talk is tubular. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bry Guy and His Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Leibig. Joining me for this episode is a man who is still currently nicknameless, so submit your suggestions on Facebook or Twitter. Josh Zorch.
I still have no name.
You still not going with the jizz?
No, we're that
Okay.
was
I
like,
just wanted to be sure, man. It's
that was
there.
like 4 episodes ago, Mike.
I know, but I'm going to suggest it until you have a nickname. So,
All right, people, help me out soon. We got to get away from this.
We also have a man whose beard could have rivaled Jason Momoa's, but I think he trimmed it a little bit. Mike Bradley.
I did trim the beard. It was getting too long, and it didn't look like we were going to hit that mark, and I would just regrow it if I had to. But it got trimmed. I didn't like it. I didn't actually enjoy having the beard that long. It was, it was a thing for charity, but they weren't going to hit that milestone. So I was like, okay, I'll just regrow it if somebody decides to pop in and drop a huge donation in the stream to get the milestones hit. We'll go for that.
All right, so finally, I'm going to get to our last guy. If he doesn't include a reference to his close personal friend in his intro, then I think this episode's meaningless. Ian Leidick is here.
Hey guys, I need you to right now. You're gonna go to youtube.com/c/Furuta That's FOURATXU, right? You're going to that website and you are there right now and you're going to watch my video called Crime City Nights Cyberpunk / Dark Synthwave. It is my Cyberpunk Dark Synthwave masterpiece. You may remember me and my close personal friend Zach Wild had a rock opera we did a couple years ago. We have now moved on to Cyberpunk Dark Synthwave. On my Cyberpunk Dark Synthwave album, you can hear a song called Tokyo Rose, The Getaway, Turbo Slash Remix, which was co-written, the remix, with my close personal friend, Zack Snyder. That's, once again, youtube.com/c/FOURATXU.
FOR
4ATXU.
4ATXU. Okay.
Are you checking that out right now?
No,
Okay.
it would be like I'm not bringing up a white colored web page right now. It's not.
You don't use dark mode?
Would I find this music credit on Zack Snyder's IMDb page?
I don't think they put like writing credits for music on IMDb because it's not the Internet Music Database.
But it could be like in trivia or something. I imagine there's somewhere that
I mean, this is a
can
pretty
verify
hot
this.
new release, so I don't know if his people have updated it yet.
That's true.
This
It is hard to-
this is what we were working on while we were negotiating the deal with Time Warner.
So when we get that badass Zach Wild Junkie XL mix that's going to be coming because Zack Snyder then introduces them, that's going to be because of you.
Well, duh.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
You dumb bastard.
I'm just happy you brought it back around. I thought we were only getting halfway there with Zach Wild as your intro. So I'm glad you brought it back.
I know what the people want.
This episode has found meaning now. I appreciate it.
A Wild Snyder production.
Fuck, that should have been our name.
So lately, I guess there hasn't been much news to talk about as far as like geek stuff is related. We did an episode, I guess like the last one or the week before, that we did some geek news stuff, which we were trying to compile what was happening. So if you've been following along, you probably heard about this one, that the Snyder Cut of Justice League is real. It's a thing. It's happening. So with that big of an announcement, I had to sort of throw up the bat signal and see who all I could grab to talk about this. I felt like it was a little bit like all hands on deck kind of topic. Andy was lined up to appear. We didn't get Andy for this one. The more him and I talked about it, I thought we might actually get into some specifics of like Joss Whedon's Justice League, so the one that is out now to be viewed, which Andy still hasn't seen. So he didn't want any spoilers. He decided to bow out for this one. So Andy, we miss you. We'll bring you back, I guess, if we ever get around to Justice League in any form, whether it's this one or the other one. Doesn't matter. We'll get you back.
There you go. We can have him go in like watching Blind on the Snyder Cut and get an opinion from somebody that never has seen the Whedon cut.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Let's do that.
You know, tell him not to watch
There you
it.
go, Andy. You have your mission.
Just
Save
keep what you've
whatever
been doing for
you're
another 3
watching.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep being you. Just keep doing your thing.
All right, so this is just an episode dedicated to Snyder Cut, what's happening, what we sort of are going to think about it. I tried to do some research and go through the timeline of events to just kind of see how we got here, and then we'll sort of dive into our thoughts and questions and stuff. So it's a mouthful to read. I'm going to try to get through as quickly as possible, so bear with me as I'm just going through. I broke up some of them with some questions for these guys just so I'm not monologuing the whole time. So we'll get a few breaks here and there. So back in May of 2012, Marvel releases The Avengers, which is 5 movies and 4 years worth of setup, culminating in a superhero team-up movie that was as much of an experiment as it was a success. It broke box office records, proved that this shared cinematic universe involving superheroes is something that audiences wanted to see. 2 months later, DC releases The Dark Knight Rises, which was the final film in Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. It was the end of an era for one of DC's biggest heroes, but they were also working on the start of what they hoped to be their own shared movie universe. 1 year later, in June of 2013, DC released Man of Steel. This film was the modern origin story for Superman, directed by Zack Snyder. The movie released to, I guess, more or less mixed reactions, but it was still considered a success for DC. So just maybe a quick hit for you guys. What do you have as far as just thoughts of Man of Steel? Like it, hate it? Where do you fall for Man of Steel?
Fantastic film by one of my favorite directors. Really
I feel like you're going
knocked
to say that for everyone we're going to talk about.
really knocked it out of the park. He took Superman's origin story, brought it to a modern perspective while keeping in the tried and true classics of a blue-collar man living the American ideals even though he's not from America.
Very good.
Did you write that down?
No, I just know what Superman is.
He says it every day in front of the mirror just to get himself
Just
going.
like the cadence and the pacing of the delivery, it's just like it sounded very
rehearsed.
read
It sounded rehearsed.
He practices his praising of his close personal friend
He says it to the Zack Snyder shrine in the corner of his room.
Maybe that's the password to get into Zack Snyder's house?
No, it's Sucker Punch.
Like at the gate when you pull up, that's the password.
Mike, Man of Steel, what are your thoughts?
Love some parts of it, hate some parts of it. Do you want me to go in depth, or do you just? Want
I don't want to really dwell on it, but if you want to go a little bit more, you can.
I like Cavill as Superman. I think he did an excellent job. Russell Crowe as Jor-El, fantastic. Michael Shannon was great. But I mean, of the Zack Snyder DC films, I think it's the best one. I'll say that for it.
Yeah.
And it's rewatchable. But I feel like it has, I don't know, tone issues.
Yeah.
That I would
agree.
Like as much.
Inconsistent as it goes, or it doesn't. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, I don't want to dwell too much on the same idea we all know about Zack and the whole darkness tone to everything.
Okay.
But for a character who's supposed to be all about hope, I never felt that Superman provided much to anyone in the film.
Okay.
To me, like, it just was a very off-putting representation of the character. Even as much as I like Cavill playing the character, I think he fits very well as Superman. I didn't necessarily I don't know. It didn't feel like Superman.
So if it's okay, I'll jump off that thought to give my impression, because I know one of the big ideas that is always kicked around when discussing people's thoughts of this movie was like the whole third act climax and the destruction of so much is so antithetical to Superman and what has been written before, what has been seen before, etc. And sure, you can debate that. I never got hung up on that. I don't know, like, I don't go into really any of these movies, whether it's Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, even if I have like an impression of the source material, I don't know. I don't go into it with an idea of like, well, that's not that person.
Yeah,
that's not that character that I'm seeing portrayed here. So, and if that's how someone is, that's fine. But because of that, like, that never bothered me per se. And so in the same way that, along those same lines, I think that, like, the way Mike's the point that he just left off on, it also really didn't leave me with that impression. I think I was able to just kind of digest the movie for what it was, and I would agree with, like, maybe the tone, the way that he's describing that. In general, I remember the first time seeing it, I was like, probably like, okay, that was like a 6 out of 10. It didn't, like, there was a lot that I really liked about it, quite a bit. And then I remember rewatching it maybe like 2 years ago. I forget if it was just before Justice League or a little bit afterward, whatever it was. And actually finding that I liked it more.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's something about it that holds it back from being great. And I can't qualify that in my head. I would say it's definitely above average. It's solidly good.
Yeah.
But, like, for something in my head, like, I just can't push it past like a 7 to a 7.5 out of 10 rating. I don't know why. Yeah,
I think, at least for me, I don't know if it, like, I agree with Mike for the tone, but the more I'm thinking about it, like, maybe the dark and gritty tone isn't that bad for me. I guess I kind of dig that. I think my gripes with it are more just story character decisions that happen. I think there's a better way to get to the climax of that film and show why Superman makes the decisions that he does instead of just kind of doing it. And I know I've talked about it in the past on other episodes, which I'm not going to get into here just in case I'm trying to be as general spoiler free as possible, just because I'm afraid there's someone that hasn't seen some of these movies, so I'll dance around it as much as I can. But it's more story related for me. I think were my hangups. I think Cavill's an excellent Superman. I thought he got the shaft because the movies that he's in seem to be, badly reviewed, and people don't like them as much as I think they should. And I think it's no fault of his. I think he's excellent. So I would love to see him get more of an opportunity to play Superman. I'm still hoping he's not done, but I guess only time will tell for that. And as much as we could probably keep going, I'm going to just keep moving us on here. So after Man of Steel, while we waited on news for an eventual sequel, we got one. But instead of Man of Steel 2, Zack Snyder revealed at Comic-Con in 2013 that the sequel would face off Batman and Superman. So the cast of Man of Steel would continue. No word on who would be Batman. We knew it would be Christian Bale because he ended his run. A month after that announcement, in August of 2013, it was announced Ben Affleck would be Batman. So that was the whole Batfleck thing when that started. Cut to March of 2016, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was released. And while the film made more money than Man of Steel, the film became very divisive, as some people started to have a problem with Zack Snyder's style and tone for what these characters, I guess what people thought these characters should be. Starting with Man of Steel, like Mike was saying, certain people didn't think the tone fit for Man of Steel and only got darker and grittier for BVS. And the direction that these heroes seemed to be going was, I guess, really in stark contrast to what Marvel was doing. And Marvel movies are making a shit ton of money and getting a huge audience every time they came out, and DC's were struggling a little bit. So another just kind of quick hit, BVS. Where do you guys stand on BVS?
A fantastic movie by an auteur director. You would think after the first one, there is no way that after Man of Steel that this director could bring out a better Superman, and then he does. He wills a better Superman out of Henry Cavill. And then he destroys it. He destroys it by having an amazing story. I'm using destroying a good word. He kills it. And just to be clear, and he has a perfect storyline set up with a great twist where we find out that these characters, even though
he can't even hold it together himself.
Even though they're from different worlds, different parts of the country, different upbringing, poor, rich, farmer, businessman, they still have mothers at the end of the day. Isn't that what it's all about?
You're saying each of them have a mother, respectively.
Yes. They have
interesting
mothers, and they're not the same person.
I think that part might have escaped me. That didn't come through as much, very strongly.
Well, Snyder has a very subtle touch when he directs. And I think he really let it shine here, because with the mother talk, he also had the key moments where he was trying to show an older Batman that's no longer able to do it as well as he could have in his prime, hence why some people had issues with Batman killing people, which I didn't, because Batman's killed before and he'll kill again. He's a menace to society. But
examples, please.
Well, he in the early Bronze Age, Batman started off wielding a gun, killed lots of people doing that. So moving on from that example of Batman killing someone, and then he killed Jason Todd. But moving on from those, it showed an older Batman.
Up some characters here.
No, he definitely killed Jason Todd. Read it. Anyways, moving on, my auteur director friend then brought in that combination of an aging Batman dealing with what if, really a modern American question. If a rogue power gets a nuclear weapon, how do we stop them? What do we do? Superman is that nuclear weapon, and Zack brought that in a way the everyman can see through superheroes. And it was really a great allegory for North Korea.
Mike, you want to jump in next?
Okay, I'll start. Sure. Again, there's good in this movie, as well as bad. Plenty of bad. Lots. I feel like the good end is Ben Affleck as Batman. Not actually that bad. Going into that, I was kind of cringing, like, oh, why would they make this choice? Coming out of it, I was like, all right, that, he was not so bad as Batman. So that's a plus. And we get introduced there to Jeremy Irons as Alfred, and that's another big plus. Jeremy Irons doing just about anything plus. At least in my book. I know, maybe not in everybody's, but...
Oh, no, he was really good in that. He was one of the... Definitely, along with a lot of these characters, was one of the people I was most sad to know that he was going away and probably, never coming back.
Yeah.
We've been blessed with good Alfreds recently.
Yeah.
That's fair. As far as the rest goes, generally I like Jesse Eisenberg, but the guy is not fucking Lex Luthor. He made, like, it just was, as a casting choice, it made no sense whatsoever. And the whole Superman is Jesus shit that goes on in there, I'm just kind of like, fuck, I can't do it. That I had a big problem with. The whole, I don't know, just so much of it just went so, what the fuck just happened? Like, again, Gal Gadot coming in as Wonder Woman, interesting way to introduce Wonder Woman. She was obviously good, but I don't know that her presence made sense to me at that time. I mean, that's not to say the scenes weren't fucking awesome, and that's where we get the song for the first time that is so good, the Wonder Woman theme song that we have from this universe. I just...
At a loss for words, I see.
Yeah, like, there's so many things I could say, and I just don't want to be as mean as I would normally be, but, this movie made a lot of money, and I feel like you could polish up a turd, name it Batman versus Superman, and make just as much money. Because it's called Batman versus Superman, you're gonna make money.
Yeah, I don't know if Box Office Mojo has this data anymore, or if they let you get to it, but I would be curious to look at the drop off in week by week grosses, because I wouldn't be surprised if it had a really big opening 2 weeks and then just dropped the hell off.
I did pull some numbers for later on, but I only looked at totals. I didn't look at the weekly stuff for that.
Yeah, it did.
So I'll get to some of the numbers.
And I think sort of, well, not the reason, there's 2 reasons Marvel makes so much money. Well, 3 by this point. Obviously, over 12 years of brand fostering and creation. But even past Avengers, the reason that everything they released, aside from 1 or 2, made all the money is because everybody came and a lot of people went 2 and 3 times.
Yeah.
A fair amount of people came for Batman Superman once.
Yeah.
And that was it. So they made an impressive chunk of money probably, but that was it. I mean, I saw it in theaters when it came out. I was excited for it. Probably everyone else was. Did anyone else see this in theaters more than once?
I'd have to check my stubs. I feel like I might have, but probably not more than twice.
No, but I don't
definitely
do
did
that ever for any movie.
Because I feel like it was probably one of those movies that, it's a big summer blockbuster type of thing, that it was one of those things that even before it comes out, I'm like, yeah, I'll see it with you. Yeah, I'll see it with you. So I probably went a couple times, even before I knew what it was.
Sure.
Do you have anything else to add, or I'll jump in?
If it's on to me, I would just say the enduring impression that I've always had with this film for the last 4 years is that it was just too bloated. It's suffered from overambition, as if the writers and the creators and the creative drivers were worried this will be the only time we ever get a chance to do this, so every possible idea or storyline or nod to other famous storylines that we want to include, we're doing it all. And that's where that lack of cohesion came from. There just wasn't a strong enough through line. They didn't need Wonder Woman. They should have gone with a different format for launching their universe. They should have at least had one Batman solo movie, or jumping right into from one character solo to character versus character, hero versus hero, you needed to seed that a little bit more. I like the idea of the initial main conflict of them coming out of the events of Man of Steel, but either you needed another chapter in between there or something to bridge the gap. It was just trying to do way too much.
I mean, I feel like, to touch on what you were getting at, is like storyboarding across their extended universe was an issue. And I feel like at some point they may have gone to a whiteboard, dry erase board, and put like Batman plus Superman plus sadness, question marks, profit.
Equals bag of money that they drew with a dollar sign on it.
Yeah.
And they thought that's what they were aiming for.
And it worked for a time. For a couple movies it worked. But it didn't work over the long haul by any means.
Yeah, this is something I went back to. I know Sarah and I rented the extended cut one time, and it's like a half an hour longer, so that's
pushing like 3 hours, I think. Yeah,
the extended cut's like 3 hours, and from what I remember, is that my impression of that made it feel a little bit better from the story they laid out in the non-extended cut. But again, like I know it's too general to say like, well, this just suffered production problems. Like it just did.
I would concede that I think Zack Snyder doesn't know how to make a short, tight movie. Like all of his movies feel bloated. That being said, I do think the Ultimate Edition, or whatever they call it, the extended edition of BVS, is the superior version of that film. I think
it's better.
The stuff that gets cut in a 2 hour, you'd think you trim it down to 2.5 hours, you're not going to lose that much, but you'd be surprised how many plot threads are just left hanging. They'd get wrapped up and at least explained in the 3 hour version. So I do prefer, if you're gonna watch one, I definitely say give the extended edition the one to watch, because I think it makes more sense. And I remember seeing this movie sort of feeling like it was incomplete, like it set so much stuff up for what was to come, and it doesn't pay itself off in this movie. It was, I think, meant to pay itself off in Justice League, which never happened. So looking back at the movie, it looks like it's a bunch of setup for a payoff that never gets there. And when we get to the end of the story, like, I'm kind of hoping this is sort of what we get, just years of setup that are finally going to get paid off. But I think BVS had story issues too, that I think it I don't know if it's tried to do too much, but I mean, that's sort of why I was given the dates. Like, when Avengers came out, like, DC was trying to play catch up for all of these movies for what Avengers did. That was the benchmark, and they wanted to get there. They obviously didn't succeed, especially at the box office, compared to what Marvel was doing, and they were under the gun for it every single time. And a lot of these movies are knee-jerk reactions to what the last one did. I feel like Man of Steel came out, it did well, so let's throw Batman in and let's hit $1 billion. Batman v Superman comes out, does not make $1 billion, and then what do we do from there? And they're just trying to course correct after every movie, and it doesn't always work out.
And that's what I was saying, like, about having a full plan from the start, having an idea before they even started on where they wanted to go and how they wanted to get there. And I feel like each phase, at least, of the MCU does that, where they knew where they wanted to start, how they were going to progress things, and exactly where they were going to end up to set up the next phase. And that has never felt like that has been a thing in the least from what they were doing in the DCU. Not at all. Any more so than we're going to use the same actors. Like,
I think some of that I will get into, I think, when we start coming down between here and Justice League, for at least a little bit that I could find.
Sure.
The last tidbit I think I'll offer, because it sounds like you know where you want to take us next, but is there's some I'll just say who it is. I love listening to Mark Bernardin on the Fat Man Beyond podcast. He is actually my favorite part of that show. Anytime he talks about breaking down creation process, I'm floored, because it is so easily explained in a way that would never occur to me and that I would never be able to execute.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he discusses when he's been on some writers' jobs the last couple of years, the more he discusses, like, the writers are in process of starting a new show, especially. So he was part of a writing team that did the Castle Rock series. He was on the first season on Hulu, I think it is. And when they say, like, okay, you start and we're going to have these 10 1-hour shows. What is our ending? What is our beginning? What is our ending? What are the major beats that we hit in between there? And then it's just a matter of fragmentation, constant fragmentation. At which point, at which intervals does beat 1 happen, and then how far in advance, like how between there, when do we have to hit beat 2? Okay, now we have to fill in the space between there. And you just constantly keep chopping it up until you eventually write 10 separate episodes that achieves what you want. That illustration is the way that I think Marvel got themselves into the practice of doing. They might not have seen everything in between Iron Man and Endgame, but along the way they were able to keep the focus on filling in the gaps. What beats do we need to hit? From the get-go, it seemed DC never had that approach.
I think the difference
they
is
did not know where they were going at all.
The difference, I think, is Kevin Feige's in charge of that, and he had the free reign to do what he wanted to do or position what he wanted to position to get it to where it is. And some of this I'll get into maybe in a little bit here, but like Zack Snyder was basically in charge of this. Now, he's not a studio head. He is a director. But they basically gave him the keys to the DC shared universe and said, what do you want to do? Let's go for it. Now, he probably mapped out in his head, I don't know how much people were aware of it or what, but probably mapped out his trilogy, which would be Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League. So, as a cohesive 3-movie trilogy, he probably had a plan in place for that. Except that when he got to Justice League, shit happened, and the studio was telling him, you can't do what you want to do. You need to take our notes and do this. So he lost free reign of what his vision was, and now it looks like a pile of shit because nothing makes sense, because all the setup does not get paid off.
I guess I'll have to concede that if it turns out at least the story plots and the story layout that was originally conceived for Justice League, if that could help BVS seem like all 3 of those stories together make more sense, that might help.
I mean, BVS gives us glimpses of what Snyder's Justice League was going to be. And when we got Justice League, it was not that.
Sure.
Darkseid is nowhere to be found, and he is hinted very heavily in BVS.
Yeah, and I don't know, for me, there's just, even that is just a flawed plan to begin with. You cannot get to something like Justice League with only 2 chapters before it.
And I get that. Yeah, that was my biggest thing with the universe, too, is I think they rushed it. I would have much preferred Marvel's model of, like, solo movies to build up to a team up, and then you go from there. But at the same time, like, hiring an older actor to play Batman, too, you're already there, limited as how many movies you can get in before he's too old to play the part. So I feel like that's already under the gun of where they want to go. But at the same time, if Snyder was in charge of trying to make this universe happen, and he only really had a vision for a trilogy, and then it was like, at that point, they were going to hand it to someone else and see where they went from there, then as far as Snyder's concerned, he did what he wanted to do and finished his story, and,
sure,
that's his end game.
And I think something we need to be clear on is, from what's been said already, they're expecting this movie to be 4 hours long.
Yeah.
And
Justice League, you think?
That's what they're saying.
Yes.
For Snyder's cut,
the
Snyder cut of Justice League.
Wow. Okay.
So let's be clear when we say that was never going to happen. They were never going to put a 4-hour movie in theaters. Not on that scale. This isn't Gettysburg. Right. They're not going to do it.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to move us on. We're going to get moving down through the other. Well, this is probably the bigger section of the stuff I have to get through, so bear with me. All right, so the third movie for Zack Snyder's trilogy, which we touched on, Justice League, was already in production when BVS was released. So this puts Warner Brothers in an interesting position. They have a very expensive movie in production as they are trying to gather reactions from BVS. So right after BVS was released, There seem to be articles talking about Warner Brothers trying to manipulate Justice League based on the reaction to BVS. Now, keep in mind, Warner Brothers saw Marvel do a superhero team-up movie 4 years prior that made over $1 billion. They expected BVS to pull that kind of money. It fell short. It hit $873 million. Principal photography for Justice League wrapped in December of 2016. By March of 2017, a year after the release of BVS, and as Justice League was in post-production, Zack Snyder and his wife and producing partner, Deborah Snyder, had to deal with an unexpected tragedy as their daughter sadly took her own life. So production halted as they took some time to grieve, be with family, and as they came out of that, they both decided they needed more time than, what a few months would give, and Justice League would not make its November release date. Now, Warner Brothers was going to delay. That was an option on the table. But I think the fact that it was unclear when Zack was going to come back, he didn't want to delay the movie indefinitely. So they kept going. So in May, 2 months after the tragedy, it was announced that Warner Brothers hired Joss Whedon to take over for Zack Snyder to finish Justice League. Now, at the time, this seemed to be one of the best moves Warner Brothers could do. They wanted to emulate the success of Avengers, so why not hire the guy that wrote and directed that movie? That seems like a win-win. At the time, The Hollywood Reporter reported that after screening a rough cut of Justice League to fellow filmmakers and friends, Zack Snyder wanted to add additional scenes. So he brought in Whedon on board to write the additional scenes. But as they prepared to shoot the scenes in England, Snyder realized it was not the time to leave home. So that was when the grieving process was still in full swing. And at the time, Warner Brothers Pictures president Toby Emmerich said that the directing is minimal, it has to adhere to the style and tone, and that the template that Zack set, we're not introducing any new characters. It's the same characters in some new scenes. He's handing the baton to Joss, but the course has really been set by Zack. I still believe that despite this tragedy, we'll end up with a great movie. Now, this is where things get a little murky. Up until Justice League, Zack Snyder was basically in charge of the DC shared universe. It was his vision. Somewhere after BVS, Warner Brothers brought in Jeff Johns to oversee Justice League rewrites. Years later, rumors started coming out saying that Johns was rewriting Justice League as Snyder was shooting, which clashed with Snyder's original writing partner, Chris Terrio. And additional rumors claimed that Snyder's rough cut of Justice League was quote-unquote unwatchable. And this is when studio execs became highly unsatisfied with the way the film was coming together. They decided to hire a summit of writers to offer feedback on how to fix it. And this is how Whedon got the job. He was part of that summit. So he eventually came out of that summit, I guess, with suggestions how to improve the film, and they just gave it to him. So with Whedon hired for rewrites, at this point, Snyder was still on the movie. But once Snyder left, it was up to Joss to pick up the pieces. And not only that, but he had to deal with all the studio notes. So after the movie was released, sources said the studio thought Snyder's cut was too long. So it came down to Joss to cut the film down to 2 hours, which I guess was at least an hour's worth, which left at least an hour's worth of Snyder's footage on the cutting room floor. So the rough cut that Snyder submitted was give or take 3 hours. The studio said, we don't want something that long. That's, we can't get it that way. So cut it down to 2. So between that and then another change to Justice League was the film's composer, Junkie XL, who worked with Snyder on BVS, also with Hans Zimmer, was set to score Snyder's version of Justice League. However, when Whedon got involved, he got rid of Junkie XL and brought in Danny Elfman, so the composer changed. Another complication that was very high profile was Henry Cavill and the reshoots that he was involved in, which he was already onto his next project, which was Mission Impossible Fallout. So if you've seen the film, his character has a very bushy mustache in it. He took the break during Mission Impossible to film the reshoots for Justice League, but he was not allowed to shave his mustache. So this was the decision to have Cavill film the scenes as Superman with a mustache, and then the mustache would be edited out in post-production. And I think when you watch the movie, it becomes painfully obvious which scenes are new, because Cavill's upper lip just seems off. And while the Warner Brothers Pictures president, Toby Emmerich, was quoted as saying that the things Whedon would have to do would be very minimal, well, I think once you watch the film, you can tell there are a lot of changes made. And now we still don't know, who's at fault. If it's Whedon making the decisions, if it's coming from above him, from the studio, like just bending Whedon to their will. Either way, there's a very distinct difference in tone throughout the movie. Whedon's very comedic. Snyder's very dark. They do not gel together. With all that being said, and I'm sure there's other stuff we forgot about or haven't even known what happened behind the scenes there, but Justice League was completed and released November 2017. As far as big blockbuster superhero movies are concerned, it bombed. It opened to only $93 million domestically. That's the opening weekend for a superhero team-up film. $93 million. Its worldwide total for its entire theatrical run is $658 million. That is $10 million less than Man of Steel's total.
Oof.
So, considering Warner Brothers wanted this movie to make over $1 billion, that was a big loss for them. That is why the DCEU died. Sure, we have some other DC superhero movies. There is no mention of a shared universe now. All these movies that have come out, Aquaman, Wonder Woman is largely separate. What else do we get? Shazam makes really no mention of the DCEU. There's maybe a cameo in there that could more or less happen in universe. We don't know. It's all very loose. If you want to say they're connected, sure, they could connect, but there's no through line like we've had in the other movies previous. Now, before we get into some of the details about just the Snyder cut, I will give you guys a chance to sound off about Joss Whedon's cut of Justice League. So what did you think of that movie?
We had a movie that was filmed by one of the greatest directors of our generation. And the unthinkable happened to him, and he had to step away from the project. But during that time when he was filming possibly the greatest superhero movie that was ever filmed, he had to deal with the studio getting involved. And we never want the studio to get involved when it's someone like Warner that has no fucking clue what they're doing ever. They don't know what their left is. They still don't know to this day what left is. Now, when you have that, and then you bring in a new director, and then you get this new director to completely fuck up the original vision of the whole universe, Justice League is what you get. It is a tragedy that this occurred. It is a full-blown national tragedy that this happened. The only good thing to ever have come from this is that we got the Joker.
How did that come from this?
Because they made spin-off like DC movies that had nothing to do with the shared universe.
Yeah, Joker would not be made if it was part of the DCEU.
Do we know that? That
I don't
seems to
think they
fit
take
right
the
into
risk.
Zack
There's a strong
Snyder's tone.
case for it.
I don't think they would have put that in that universe without tying it into like some sort of Batman movie.
Well,
I
they
think
could have.
But
It wouldn't have been that
I'm,
movie.
I'm on Brian's side with it. I think because Suicide Squad was not received very well either, but if Wonder Woman came out 5-6 months before Justice League and did well and got great critical and audience reception, if Justice League would have gotten, I mean, it didn't not make money, but if it had made a bit more and had gotten better reviews, I can absolutely see that they would have taken that as justification that, okay, at least we are somewhat still on the path. Whether we choose to do additional course correcting or not, who knows, but they wouldn't, I don't think they would have said, all right, we need to just start breaking these all off and go separate ways. So the idea of doing a separated Joker movie at all would not have, like, they'd have said, like, why would we do that? We have this connected series of movies we're doing.
Yeah, I'm not saying it wouldn't have ever happened, but it wouldn't have happened now, today, where it is. Like, it would have been years down the line if it happened.
Okay, that's fair.
I think you still could have gotten Shazam and Aquaman.
Oh, for sure.
Like they probably would have leaned.
I'm pretty sure both of those were planned long before Justice League bombed.
Oh, sure. And they both would have they leaned more heavily into the shared universe aspect.
Yeah.
Of everything
sure.
had they done that. And that's the thing. I mean, even a lot of Marvel movies don't necessarily constantly rely on appearances of characters from other movies and references to events from other movies.
Touch here and there.
They can get they can survive on their own. So I think Aquaman, especially because Shazam was never mentioned in any capacity whatsoever before that movie.
Right.
Aquaman obviously probably would have I don't want to say callback necessarily, but right, it would have included some more connective tissue.
You get one name drop of a Justice League reference, and that is it for the entire film.
Right, just to kind of nod. All right, look, we know, it's there.
Yeah,
we're in this movie now.
Yeah,
remember that Aquaman. Let's keep watching.
Well, as far as the Justice League movie with the Whedon cut that we got goes, so here's the one thing I want to note is that what they were originally shown as the Snyder cut, they said was not. It wasn't that they said it was bad. It wasn't that they said it was not what they were like. They said it was unwatchable. That was what was said about it. Unwatchable. That to me says maybe Whedon did the best he could with what he had to work with. It was never going to be good, but Whedon polished it up as best he could and sent it out there.
Well, this is sort of like, I wanted to mention the times because going back to what we talked about, or at least what I mentioned earlier about Zack Snyder not being able to make a short film, I think 3-hour cut of whatever he made, it might actually be good and actually make sense for whatever he was setting up. And I think...
Well, isn't that the cut they watched and called it unwatchable?
That is the cut they used to sabotage him and said it was unwatchable to leak it to the media so that people would turn on Zack Snyder. And it was not an unwatchable cut. This is Time Warner trying to get people to be like, oh, no, it's not that bad. Just watch the Joss Whedon one. It's going to be good, guys. That other one was shit. It is a travesty what they did to this man.
Theoretically,
okay, just to be sure,
the cut that Zack Snyder originally showed has not changed. Like, that is probably the Snyder cut that everyone keeps referring to that they want to see. Now, apparently he screened that for execs recently, and they said, yes, let's make this now. So what changed?
Justice League bombed. That's what changed.
Well,
they realized their shit didn't work.
What happened is a bunch of people whined online about it to try and get it released, and they were like, you know what? What's the difference? It can't hurt us at this point.
They're spending more money on it. I mean, it's not like they're going.
They're spending $20 million
to start. It's going to cost more.
All right, so we're jumping the gun here. Back to Joss Whedon's cut. Whedon's cut.
Travesty. Traitor.
I'm not saying it's all that great, but we'll know at least a little bit more about which is the better cut once we actually see the Snyder cut. Until then, the people that have seen the Snyder cut didn't like it.
Leaked to the media words that it was unwatchable, but recently they've decided, hey, we'll invest more money into this. People involved in the filming thought it was a superior cut. Major movie stars were like, yes, that's what should have been released. Not the hack version the studio forced out there.
I feel like that's more standing in line with feeling bad for Zack Snyder than anything else.
Well, the point I was going to try to make here, too, is that the studio execs are apparently the ones that didn't like it. That doesn't mean, like, to Ian's point, the people involved making the film think it was better. So, studio execs, I don't know, half of them I don't feel like know what the fuck a good movie is, so it's really hard to take their opinion for what a movie is. But I don't know.
I mean, Ben Affleck still appeared in Phantoms.
Hey,
he was the Paul in Phantoms, yo!
I had to drop it there. I just was like, let me put this on a tee and let somebody do something with it.
And that is a fair point, that if the people who, and let's be honest, actors and actresses have much more to lose probably from public criticism than producers, composers, directors. Directors, in some way, you might not know it because it's not like, if you don't see an actor, a big name actor in a film for a while, eventually sometimes it comes in your head like, oh wait, what have they been up to? I haven't seen them how often does the average person follow directors?
Yeah.
You know,
so average people aren't.
They can suffer repercussions, but from a publicity standpoint, a public figure standpoint, the people who are your on-screen presence are going to feel something like that much more, and so therefore they probably have. I want to say they have more to lose, which might not be fair to people like directors that still can have consequences to stuff like this, but it feels like the public exposure, and so therefore public nature of any backlash or retort will be felt and perceived more strongly to your on-screen talent than the creators.
Right.
So if they're sticking their necks out for it, then yeah, maybe there is something to say for that.
So just because I feel like we're going to end up getting right back on this subject in a little bit, I want to spin us back, Josh, to Josh Whedon's. I keep wanting to say Josh Whedon's cut. Joss Whedon's cut. Josh, what is your thoughts?
The word I tried to throw in a couple minutes ago. The final version was just inept. If nothing else, the moment where they, and spoilers, whatever, because there's no way to talk about this without them. So cover your ears, go away. The moment where they have resurrected Superman and they're fighting him in the Memorial Park or whatever. Okay, fine. I'll let that go. At the end of that conflict, as they just look across like 2 football fields worth of land and see the big bad adversary of this thing, who is supposed to be kind of like your Loki, like your junior Thanos type of first big bad taking on the team, etc. And he is making off with part 2 of the 3 things that he is looking for that are supposed to bring destruction to the universe, that you just, like 5 of you just left freaking on the ground. Like nobody has even a thought like, yeah, okay, Superman, I get it. He might be pissed. Something gotta help. Okay, you pick it up and put it under your arm. Bring it over there with you. It's not that far. Like, you can fly. You can run faster than light. There are options here.
Yeah.
It was like, out of anything of that movie where you could say, well, this isn't strong. This isn't strong. This isn't strong. That moment in particular, I thought, it's lost.
Yeah.
And that still sticks with me. I can take almost everything else, but that moment alone was just like, okay, they just needed to get a movie out.
Yeah, I mean, every one of these movies has their moments. There are really cool things that happen in these movies. And granted, I probably haven't watched Justice League in a while, so I don't remember. Watching them now, I don't know how it would stack up to the other movies, if I would like it any more or less than the other movies. Right now, I think Man of Steel might be my favorite out of the 3. But I'm not sure if I'd put BVS over Justice League. I'd probably have to watch Justice League again to be sure.
Out of the 3, easily it's on the bottom for me.
Yeah, okay.
Easily.
But again, I do think that just studio meddling, like the untimely tragedy that happened to Zack that forced him to leave, it's one of those things where, like, looking back at it, once it comes out, like, you sort of know it's in trouble, but everything that you read or saw looked like this movie might come out and be okay. And then you see it and you're like, no, you know what? That was in a lot of trouble. And I don't think we realized how bad of trouble it was in, or what they decided to change at the last minute. Cause it does seem like it had considering Zack was part of it up until, maybe, 8 or 9 months before release. Like, by that time, the story should be locked, and you should just be doing post-production and special effects stuff and finishing the movie. So, in the months from there, something, either that or it was in trouble from the get-go, and they were constantly changing stuff, which is, again, sort of what you kind of read if you start digging around. It's one of those films that, I'd love to see some sort of documentary on the making of that film, because I feel like there's all kinds of shit that happened that no one knows about yet. It's very hard to corroborate sources and figure out who's right and what's just a rumor of somebody sort of kind of saying what they thought. But anyway, either way, moving on to the new stuff. So in the years since Justice League's release, there have been rumors of Snyder's original cut, his version for the movie that was, mostly intact from the original cut and had, unused footage that would have got cut from the 2-hour version of Whedon that are still floating around. Especially since they had finished principal photography before Snyder left. So all of this and the rumors of all the changes and studio meddling and stuff, this sparked the hashtag release the Snyder Cut movement. So if you've been on Twitter, chances are you've seen that. It's popped up all the time. And I know we've talked about it on the show from time to time too. Like if it would ever be released, if it was even finished, or if it's, even just existed in the first place, or if it's just some wet dream of some internet fanboys. but as of now, today, we can officially say it does exist. It will be released. Zack Snyder hosted a watch along with Man of Steel a couple days ago. At the end, he was joined by Henry Cavill. Snyder announced at the end of this that his version of Justice League would be coming to HBO Max next year. The Hollywood Reporter, which is the same author actually who wrote the original piece about Snyder's exit from Justice League 3 years prior, reported that Snyder is gathering his original post-production crew to cut, score, and edit the film. It is unclear at this point if it will be, like Mike mentioned, almost 4 hours, or there's a possibility it could be divided into 6 chapters. They're saying it would cost Warner Brothers around $20 to $30 million to finish whatever is left to do, whether most likely post-production, editing, special effects, all that stuff that we talked about. So this is where we can finally open it up to you guys and really dive into this thing. I guess first and foremost, are you surprised that this announcement kind of took me by surprise? We talked about it a little bit before the show. April Fool's, which was a month and a half ago, April 1st, the tweet was floating around on Twitter that HBO Max was releasing the Snyder Cut, and when I first saw that, I thought it was real, and then I realized what date it was, and okay, it's April Fool's, so this is full of shit. I saw this tweet, the official announcement from HBO Max on Twitter in the middle of May, and I immediately thought, is this an April Fool's joke? Like, I had to double check and figure out what the hell day it was that I wasn't being trolled before I retweeted and validated that. So it took me by surprise. I don't know if it surprised anybody else.
Not me, honestly. HBO Max needed a selling point. They needed something that said, this is going to be there. This is something you can look forward to with HBO Max. This is our flagship thing. Because they already have a couple things that aren't really that big of a deal. They have some shows that are already, like reruns. They're getting The Office, I believe. They're getting Rick and Morty. But they're not getting, the access to the new episodes of those things. They're getting access to the reruns. So, the new Rick and Morty episodes will still be going to Cartoon Network. Things like that. Where they needed something like this. And I think it had been rumored, even before that April 1st tweet, that HBO Max was trying to do this.
Quite honestly, I feel like I read
murmurs.
that too, but I don't like, it's something I try not to do on the social medias for the page and on this podcast in general, is just comment on rumors. And the fact that this was an ongoing rumor for years, it was like, how much are we going to talk about this? And then it's never going to happen. So I didn't keep following up on it.
I meant specifically HBO Max, was a rumor before the April thing.
Okay. So
it being something HBO Max was shooting for was something that was rumored even before that April 1st post, which is why the April 1st post, I think, was so successful, is because it was already out there as a bit of a, this is how it's going to happen.
And Josh and I were trying to go back and listen. Well, Josh was trying to listen to some episodes to see if we made that prediction that it might, if it was possible to end up on the streaming service. And I couldn't remember. I'm sure we talked about it. I just couldn't remember what episode or when, because I was curious to see who might have predicted that correctly. Because Josh was under the impression he made some predictions that might be right, but then we couldn't find the predictions he made to validate his predictions.
Well, I will also qualify that. It was definitely not a prediction from what I remember. It was more or less saying, however it had come up on the topic, the conversation that we had been speaking of, I'm pretty sure that I said something to the effect of, if they, I think I was saying, I don't really have an interest in HBO Max for myself, but if they were to put this on that platform, I would at least sign up for the minimal amount of time that I could, just to see that. If it's a month, if it's 3 months, whatever if they're going to set it up that way, I would do it just to see this. And I think that's what I had said.
Okay.
I think we're just more speculating, how could this ever see the light of day? Under what circumstances might it?
Right, and thinking about it now, it's pretty simple. Warner Brothers knows a lot of people want to see it. HBO Max knows a lot of people want to see it. HBO Max needs something to draw people into their service, and they say, well, why don't we just go to Warner Brothers and offer to pay for this? We'll pay to get it done. is the deal I would assume that is happening here. HBO Max
It's all
is
the
going to...
same.
Well,
It's all the same
yeah, I say
company.
Warner owns HBO.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not... owning it and, like, the spending and profit doesn't end up in the same place. Like, it's still...
Sort of. I mean, it's like
You're saying if
shifting
HBO
accounting around.
You're saying if HBO makes money, that somehow does not go into Warner Brothers' pocket?
No, I'm saying that Warner gets a percentage of that, but they're not getting all of it.
I mean, either way, they're still making money off of it, though. Is the point I'm trying to get
Right,
at.
they are, but HBO Max wants HBO Max to be a thing, and they're like, we'll pay for it. It's the same as if you and I went into business, and I really thought something would work for a new service I wanted to introduce, and I said, I'll pay to get this on there if you okay it. But like
Well,
something
I
you own
don't-
the rights to, and I wanted
I-
to,
Not necessarily. I think there's a difference. It's like if now that Disney owns Fox, like if Fox wanted to do something, it's Disney's money.
Yeah, they're still paying the bills.
It's
I mean,
not it's not a
right,
partnership.
but
it's an
yeah,
acquisition.
but that's different entirely though, because Fox is technically like out of business.
Right. But it's still, I don't know, it's still a business unit owned by Warner Brothers or whatever, like AT&T owns them now, whoever the hell has it. Like, it is just another
Yeah, they're
part of the portfolio.
It's a
but
bunch
all
of
under the same
billionaires
umbrella.
trading shit around. But what I'm saying is the money does not all funnel up to the same person.
But the accountability still would. So, like,
All right, I don't want to get
accountability's
lost in
different.
who's paying the, where the bill's going.
Yeah, we're
Like-
just talking about where the bill's going. And I'm saying, like, HBO Max is willing to foot out that money to get it out the door. Even if it's Warner Brothers saying, like, we own HBO Max and we want HBO Max to work. Whatever the case is, they're willing to foot the bill to get this service on its feet.
Sure.
Something they said they would never do. They literally, it wasn't that long ago, they said, we'll never do this. And that may have been
Fair.
a marketing scheme to get people even more hyped when they finally announced they are going to do it. That may have been a plan. Who knows? But I'm not surprised to see it done in this capacity. Had it been done in a different capacity where they were like, we're going to make a theatrical release of it, yeah, that would have surprised me.
Yeah, I don't think that was ever on the table.
But in this sense, it makes sense, and it's not that much of a surprise. It's a surprise to see them announce it anytime. It's always like, oh, look, they actually did it.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like in this context I'm very surprised by it.
Ian, are you surprised? Did Zach call you up personally to tell you what was going on?
To give you the in advance warning.
Now, these rat bastards were struggling, and they knew they needed some magic. So they came crawling on their hands and knees to Zack Snyder to ask him to release magic, and that is what we are going to see in 2021. I am thrilled that it happened. Am I surprised? Am I surprised that the rat bastards that screwed us out of possibly the greatest superhero movie of all time is going to finally give us what I want? Yes. I'm surprised.
With such conviction.
Surprised that it occurred. In that sense, have I been demanding this since probably the day November 17th, 2017, when movies died? Yes. Yes, I have been demanding it.
The day the music died.
And to finally see it happen is going to be amazing. I don't care how it's released, 1 4-hour thing. Because if you release it as 6, so they really think I'm not going to just wait 6 weeks and just watch it all at once? Yeah. I'm watching
Right.
his original
Yeah,
vision, which is one chunk of time. Maybe I'll take a 2-hour break and I'll go pretend we're having a little siege session. I'll get a little wine. And I'll sit back down to watch Batman kick some Batman or whatever's going to happen. I don't know. For all I know, this is not even the same movie. This is now Dark Force. Who knows? The thing that's key here is that you're bringing in an auteur director who has a great capacity to create, especially in post-production with his editing skills, his just overall vision of something after it's been shot, and letting him cook. And it's the greatest thing that could have happened. He's bringing back the original team, the A-Team, to put on a show for the ages, and it's going to be amazing to watch this. I'm going to take a whole week off of work so I can watch it every day.
So you said like they're letting the chef cook is what you would say?
You could say that. I didn't say that.
Okay.
You could.
Well, no, I'm just wondering if that's what you mean. Like he's a master chef and they're letting him loose in the kitchen.
He is a visionary, creative, and they're letting him create.
See, because I was thinking it was the same thing. Like I kind of think of personally Zack Snyder as somebody that orders from Blue Apron and claims to be a master chef. Just because he takes a lot of other people's work and puts it on to screen
See,
with his
with
own
Blue
darker,
Apron,
more gritty vision.
they send you
more
ingredients
violence.
and stuff. You're thinking of someone that maybe reads a recipe and creates the perfect dish. Zack Snyder takes a great work and transforms it into a masterpiece. He elevates the original source material to another level, and that is what is great about Zack Snyder. He's not some hodunk director that like has to be force-fed props. Like look at all these Marvel directors. Kevin Feige just making them make movies.
Whoa.
He's just
These are all
giving.
movies you haven't seen.
He's just
Don't
giving
even
them.
start.
He's
That's
just
true. We
giving
just
them
talked about this.
action bronze, and they're putting out movies that make billions of dollars. Zack Snyder takes old school work created by
But haven't all those
artists
directors
and then
that
elevates
worked
it
in
to
the
a new level.
MCU
Something
actually
Marvel
made,
has never
quality
done.
content outside of the MCU with content they created themselves?
I couldn't hear what you were saying because I was talking.
I was just talking over you. I was just wondering. I mean, because I kind of feel like
I wasn't done yelling.
the directors in the MCU have
Any creative input, I agree.
created-
They do not.
created quality content outside of stuff that was thought up by other people.
I think Kevin Feige thought it up, so no, I don't think they have done anything on their
I said
own.
outside of the MCU.
On their own,
They've all done things on their own that somebody else didn't think up first.
I mean,
It was
I
quality.
don't know their background, so I won't comment on that. I will say Zack Snyder's career has shown that he is a great creator.
Of
I
A
I have a
film,
separate
a
question.
film. Maybe you've heard of it.
I have a separate question that I'm going to say right now.
Yes, Josh.
Is if the final version does turn out to be close to 4 hours, do you think that is necessary for what they would need to do to achieve like a successful story in the case, like the stepping stones that they set for themselves? Is that actually what they need, or do you think there's a way that they could get there in two? So for reference, the cut of the Whedon cut, call it, of Justice League was pretty much 2 hours on the dot.
Yes.
Uh,
So he did exactly what the studio
is
wanted.
there an amount
Yes.
of time? I know the question you're leading towards, and the thing I want to clarify: do we have a time on the amount of reshots included in that?
well, yeah, not
How
not
much
sure
do we know exactly how
about that,
much
but
was like time wise involved
Right,
that
so-
was Snyder's material versus Whedon's?
I think there's varying degrees of numbers. Like the in the statement where like I was trying to research some of this stuff. If I had more time, I might have been able to find more. But the numbers that I saw was that supposedly Whedon was only going to have to do 15 to 20% of the movie reshoots.
Okay,
However, I think if you watch the movie, it is far greater than that amount. So I don't know what the actual number is. I'd push towards half the movie.
okay. So we're saying so we're saying in the actual cut then that we have already, there's an hour of Snyder's content and an hour of Whedon's, roughly.
I'd say give or take, but yeah, if you want to guesstimate,
Okay.
that's what
So-
I would guesstimate.
Now, Josh, go ahead with your question.
So in contrast, the first Avengers is about 220, but you already had. So I was trying to do a quick sort of count on this. Other than, I mean, I guess you'd have to say Hawkeye because he's only in Thor for 5 seconds. There's not really any other major players in Avengers that you need to spend time explaining, setting a foundation for, getting your audience to the minimum point of what do I need you to feel or know about this person before we really take off. That is everything that Justice League is, and that's everything that it lacked. So does a 4-hour movie, is that what is needed to make you necessarily and like, is that the requirement to understand and give a shit about the Flash and Cyborg and Aquaman?
Honestly, the cut of this movie, Zack Snyder's cut, I don't really care how long it is. I will watch it. If it's 6 hours, 8 hours, I just want to see a complete story. It's my biggest thing.
And that's what I want as well. So I guess that's what I'm really getting at is, given what we've said so far, do we think that it's reasonable to do that in a 2.5-hour movie? Or do you need 3 hours? And if so, then is the 4 or 5 hour cut is just going to still suffer from some of the bloated storytelling that we've said multiple times here that Snyder can't seem to avoid?
Well, I think this is just like if it's going to the streaming service, it doesn't have to be cut to quote unquote movie length.
Yeah.
It could be whatever
Right.
it needs to be to finish itself. Which
And maybe
you know,
it needs
if
to be 3 or 4 or 5. What
Right.
I'm asking is, what do we think? Do we think that what we'll get is what is necessary to tell the good story, or if it's exceedingly long, will it still be over bloated in the way that we've said he can tend to make his movies?
I think whatever it ends up, in my opinion, whatever it ends up being is going to be what it needs to be. So if it's 4 hours, that's what it's going to take to do the story justice, to finish, not leave like an extra hour on the cutting room floor. I think 4 hours is going to be the movie, but it's going to make sense. We're not going to have we're not going to get a director's cut after that that's going to be 5 hours long. Like this is it.
Could we though? Because I
Yeah,
still
yeah,
watch that.
I would still watch it, correct? Yes, but I don't think we're going to get that. I think this is it. The definitive version of Justice League is this movie.
Yeah, this is he'll put forward whatever version he thinks is best to put forward. Whether or not that ends up with bloat or not, we'll have to see when we see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if Darkseid is not in this movie, I'm going to be thoroughly disappointed because that's where all the setup has been going.
Well, yeah, but the setup was there for Thanos too, and all we got from him, you know what I mean, like until how many years later?
Right, but they know that we're not getting that movie. Like we're not going to get Justice League 2. This is going to be it.
Right, I
you
understand
think,
that,
like,
but
if they're actually trying to correct that part of the problem,
Like, how much did they shoot? Was Darkseid originally in this movie?
I don't.
Well,
Did he get cut for Steppenwolf? Is
I
the
don't
version
think
that
so.
I think is there.
right? And I could even see that, like, maybe Steppenwolf still is the main adversary in this, but you have much more of the understanding of, like, okay, what the hell actually is Darkseid? What is his connection to Steppenwolf? What is their relationship? Like, you still have like a lieutenant in a way,
Yeah,
being the first
And if
one
the movie-
out
yeah,
of the
and if
battlefield.
the-
I could swallow that easily.
And if the movie's 4 hours long, I definitely think 2 hours is going to be Steppenwolf, and the last 2 is going to be Darkseid.
Could be. But you at least have that extra time to tell if Darkseid is not the main thing that the team fights and or possibly defeats. I could be okay with that as long as what you've given me, like you said, seems to make sense and you've covered your bases and you've made your foundations.
But to me, that wouldn't make sense because it's still setting up a story that will never get concluded.
right.
Okay,
But if
so-
they don't have the footage, they don't have the footage.
Right.
Well, that's
I
what
guess in my head, I think I'm still assuming like they're constrained. They can't rewrite the future that they now see was not going to happen. They still
Yeah.
have to work within what was possible at the moment.
I guess I was
Yeah.
always under the impression that Darkseid was, I guess, yeah, you could see them trying to postpone it like they did with Thanos, but the fact that I think
Not
DC
as
was trying
long,
to play,
but
well,
I felt like it was
still,
another
even,
movie away.
Even still, I think the fact that they were trying to catch up to Avengers, like they would have beat Avengers to that big cosmic bad first had they included him in Justice League. And
Yeah, but
considering
like
again,
I said,
we're-
I figure like Justice League 2 is what they were aiming for with Darkseid. So
and which could be too. I don't know. I mean,
What I guess the difference is like it depends on what question is being answered, and I think I'm answering the question: what do I reasonably expect they could achieve with releasing something like this? They can't. They like I said, they can't magically fix.
there's no
was
shoots happening. There's
done,
no
like,
new footage.
Yeah.
And even if they were able to do like minor things, they're not going to be able to do that, knowing, oh, we never got a Justice League Part 2, so therefore we must somehow remake and reshape this entire movie that we're going to release to account for that. But if they
Right.
make a longer cut of a thing that seems to make a lot more damn sense and doesn't wrap up everything in a nice little package, that's fine. But if the 3 to 4 hour movie still makes way more sense and makes you understand who these people are, why I care about them all, really what the motivations of the villain are and why we give a shit about him,
yeah.
and possibly that they don't leave the whole freaking smart... I can't get over this goddamn mother box thing. Like, that would be the equivalent of the Avengers literally, like, having, oh, here's the time stone, and, oh, okay, what was this one? This was, oh, the Mind Stone? Yeah, we got it out of Vision, no problem. How about we set this on the nightstand while we go fight that guy across the street? Yeah, we're cool. We're, right? It's
Yeah.
fine. No protection over there? Good. Like, that's how much sense this does not make. And I'm under the impression that was part of the reworking of the story.
Yeah.
after Snyder's exit. So if like that kind of shit isn't there, I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, let me spin it this way too. If we sort of get the cut that you're talking about, Josh, where Darkseid's not there.
I mean,
Ian, you might have to correct me. Is it Darkseid or Darkseid? Because I feel like I'm saying both.
You can say both.
Okay. So if Darkseid's not there and it's just all for like setting him up, and he was eventually supposed to be in Justice League 2, and we'll say like the end of Justice League 1 is just the tease that he is there, just like Thanos. And then eventually we're going to lead there. To me, that would kind of piss me off because, again, it was all the setup that was in BVS, never gets paid off, really. But if this movie comes out, hits HBO Max, it's 4 hours long, it fucking rejuvenates the DCEU. Could we get Justice League 2 out of this?
Yeah.
If this is universally praised,
I mean, anything's possible.
We got Snyder
could they
Cut.
bring,
We got Snyder Cut.
Could they bring Affleck back to reprise Batman for a Justice
We
League
don't
2?
know
You don't
about-
think we'll ever continue
No,
that? It's
we'll have
done.
Robert Pattinson do it. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is, like, to me at least, I don't think it's likely that would happen. But to give you another scenario, so say everything goes like the way you want, you get Darkseid in there for this movie at the end. But instead of getting your nice wrapped up thing, what Snyder had was more akin to the end of Infinity War. What then?
Were they all die or lose or something?
Well, where they lose. And then the next movie was meant to be, they come back and win.
Yeah, see, the ending on the cliffhanger would drive me up a wall. Like, if
that's what
if
I mean.
this
Like,
is it,
this may be a blessing in disguise, or like a curse in disguise, I guess. As maybe it's great, but it ends on a spot that leaves these same people that have been begging for this for years, begging for a sequel that never happens. Because I don't think they're going to dedicate hundreds of millions of dollars to a sequel, because the fans, the deep fans, really wanted this movie made.
What's what I mean?
Because
Like,
the
I wonder
general
what the-
public is still going to be like, nah, I'm not going to see
I wonder what
that.
the magic number is, like, for new subscription for HBO Max, that people that subscribe just to watch this when it's released. Like, there's got to be a magic number somewhere where they're like, you know what? There's a lot of interest here
I
for
would
these
say
characters in
enough
the
to make
series.
$1.5 billion at the theater.
I think the main reason that it doesn't
If you
happen,
extrapolate it out to homes and tickets, I guess. Because it's
Yeah.
not one subscription per person, it's one subscription per home. So it's, but nonetheless, go ahead, Josh.
the main reason I don't see it ever happening is because you now have 3 movies and a 4th coming and a 5th coming that have already happened post the one chapter that we got. You can't retcon Shazam and Wonder Woman 2 and Aquaman now.
But I also think that they're so
already
loose that you could just drop them in wherever.
Yeah, you could just ignore it.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman sequel is in 1984, which is before any of this happens. Shazam is largely on its own and doesn't really matter. Aquaman sort of happened after Justice League, but it doesn't mean if it's after Justice League 2 or Justice League 1. You could have that happen whenever.
Yeah, they didn't really
Perhaps
reference what
in
happens
theory.
in Justice League unless they
That's
kill Aquaman in Snyder's cut, which we don't know. You know what I mean? It's possible
Yeah.
that Aquaman dies in that cut. I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure they still had the Aquaman movie planned at that time.
I mean, Pattinson is the biggest wrench in there.
Well, we don't know the
that
story
movie's-
there yet, though. That could be a really old, version of Batman where it's like Batman Year One, kind of. We still don't know.
Yeah, but I don't think you can have that exist in the same way that like the Joker was able to, and still pretend that there's a shared universe. No, there's not. We have these individual characters. Some
Well,
of the
maybe
which were
they'll
part of that
ruin-
shared
What's-
universe. Now we're going back to these individual.
Maybe they'll
stories.
ruin the
Now we're
Batman movie because of the performance of the Snyder cut, and they'll be like, "No, we have to retcon everything you did with this so that we can fit Batman into the next Justice League movie somehow, and we can make it make sense." And then they destroy that movie,
right,
so
then
that
they'll
they
ship
can make the
bed
next
again.
movie.
So I think, I mean, if you're just asking if do we think it could happen or not, easy answer, no. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's less likely. I think given like at least all the hype that is around Zack Snyder's Justice League, I feel like if it fails, if it comes out after all these years and it sucks, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. But if it is good, I feel like it's going to want me to continue the story with these characters in this universe and see where it goes from here. But Josh, sort of to your point, Warner Brothers will not have two Batmans on screen at the same time. There's no way.
They won't treat Matt Reeves, the Batman, like the first Suicide Squad or the Joker and try to say, well, we were just telling this one-off story in this sometimes connected universe, and sometimes we just wanted to tell a good story.
To be fair, there's one easy answer to it.
What's that?
It's in the future, and his name is Tim Drake.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
No, I'm just, you know what I'm saying, though, like, he's
Wait,
Robin.
You mean Pattinson?
Yes. He's Robin turned into Batman in the future.
I guess that's a way you could get around it, but why in the world would they want to?
If they see dollar signs with Justice League 2, which, let's face it, Warner Brothers is not the best at making decisions.
Yeah, if they did that, that would just mean that they actually have some sort of a plan, which we know they don't, so that's not going to happen.
True. Nonetheless, I'd say there's one guarantee and one guarantee only that you can take away from what's going to come from the Snyder Cut. Whether it's good or it sucks, the people that have been begging for it for years will praise it as the best thing ever.
Yeah, probably.
You think?
Like, if it's god-awful, they're not going to let that be something. They're not going to be... It's social media. They're not going to
get egg on their face.
Concede that they were wrong. If it's good, I will absolutely be like, damn, this is awesome. But I feel like if it's bad, they will never admit that.
Well, sort of spinning off from there, years of hype for this movie, from the release, the Snyder Cut movement and all that stuff. With all that hype, what happens if it sucks?
Nothing. Exactly what would happen if they didn't release it.
It just fizzles out.
Yeah. If it's great, it opens up possibilities. If it's not, and it's bad, it's just like, well, we just blew this money on something bad, but at least it made us some back.
And that's fair, and it's only going to be contained to people who subscribe to that service and choose to watch it.
Yeah.
So, by that point...
And I could rail on about that service for hours, but I'm not going to.
Well, if Wonder Woman's rescheduled release date stays where it is, we're getting that in like 3 months, and this is not going to be out until at least, they said 2021.
We don't know when in 2021, just 2021.
Right. Yeah, that could be 18 months away.
So they either might wait until after the release of the Batman, hopefully, so that if there is any negative news cycle of any magnitude, that it in no way impacts
that's possible,
the possible release for that. I forget, did the Batman already shift release date? Did it move out of June?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
I don't remember when, because I thought that was one of the ones we covered when we went through the dates. I thought we talked about that.
Just about everything has moved because there has been no production happening.
Right.
Been able to shoot anything, so
it depends. If that moved too late into the year, I know this is not reliable by any means necessarily, but the U.S. release date on IMDb is October the 1st right now.
Yeah.
So it depends. If they can get the Snyder Cut out in March or April, and if there's negative reception to it, that'll fizzle away easily enough by fall to not impact the Batman PR. But if it's too close to it, with that being at the end of the year, might be a little bit might.
See, I guess I'd hope to think that like by the promotions of the Batman that it will separate itself tonally from Justice League, that you can feel that they are two different movies, so one shouldn't rely on the other. So if Justice League does suck and it comes out close to the Batman, I don't feel like that would affect the Batman's box office, or at least very much.
Hopefully not, but it depends on, casual movie goers, if they're just seeing headlines about some DC movie being terrible or Batman related movie being terrible, and they conflate the two, or they think one's related to the other, you never know. But if they can be out of the news cycles for a couple of months, then they'd be fine.
I kind of want to spin back to Ian. Are you open to the idea of this movie being terrible, or are you just already resigned to this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and you haven't seen it yet?
It's impossible for it to be worse than what we've already seen. I know that. It would be literally impossible. So I'm
Fair.
resigned to the fact that, bar minimum, we're going to beat Whedon. We're going to beat Whedon. We're going to show those rat bastards at the studio what should have happened, and we're making magic again. Snyder 2022.
So if literally the reason this movie wasn't watchable is because the second half of the movie, Zack Snyder hops on film himself and pulls a Mel Gibson from South Park and just starts smearing shit everywhere. Like, literally that on screen. You still feel like it's going to be better.
I think we're watching two different movies, Mike.
I think that would be a bold direction by an auteur director, and I'd have to see how it's shot and how it's scored.
But you would say that's definitely better than what we've already seen.
Is that better than the second half of the Joss Whedon Butcher job? Yes.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. I just had to throw out the worst possible scenario.
That's not even the worst possible scenario. So I'm.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually true. I guess Batman shooting Superman and it working.
Still wrong, but go on.
Well, I mean.
All right, so last question I got for you guys, and I think we sort of touched on it a little bit. Is this enough for you to get HBO Max?
I'm going to buy 10 years of it.
For me personally, I can rail on HBO Max for a short time and explain why I'm so very much against it. If you have HBO Now or HBO subscriptions to certain cable subscribers, HBO Max will be included in the price that you already pay. If you are subscribed to HBO already through other cable providers, it is not, and you have to purchase it separately. So for some people, the $15 a month that is spent on HBO already is good enough, and they can continue right along getting HBO Max at the same price that they already pay without any extra.
I'm going to guess if Time Warner is your cable provider.
No, there is. It's about half of all cable providers in the country that they're doing it for.
Interesting. Okay.
And then about half of them, Comcast included in that, of course, since I'm so upset about it. Where Comcast really doesn't offer as much with the autonomy in your packages that you get. So I'm stuck with HBO being included in my package. I can't remove it separately. It's part of a packaged price that I get. Okay? I can't remove it. I'm paying for it. And if I want to get HBO Max, I have to pay for HBO twice, whereas other people are paying once. It is a stupid fucking business model.
Well, it sounds like a Comcast issue, not an HBO issue.
No, that's an HBO issue because
it sounds like
HBO
a
Max never needed to be
a
a thing to begin with. It never needed to be a thing to begin with. If they're giving it away for the same price as everything else included with your HBO Now or your HBO subscription, it could have just stayed the same as HBO fucking is now. It's not any different. It's no different at all than what HBO already is if you're paying the same price and getting everything included. Why have two separate services?
Well, clearly it's separate if because of licensing reasons they can't include it with everyone's cable subscription already that has it. There's clearly a reason it's different then. If they can't
No. I'm saying HBO Max should never have existed. They could just put this content onto HBO. There's no reason to separate the service.
Well, because HBO shows their HBO stuff, and that's how that works. And then they have this that shows stuff like The Office. It's a separate streaming service for different viewing audiences, for people that aren't necessarily going after that premium HBO experience.
I
it's
think
the same price for the same stuff. But some people that are paying the same price are getting more than others, and there's no
because of Comcast
included. No.
But
yes.
Look, here could be a possible distinction.
If you don't have Comcast, you get it, right? So it's Comcast that's at fault.
The last time that we talked about the HBO Max model and news and whatnot was actually the episode I went back to try to listen to today, portions of it, and we did that in November. And a big part of what we talked about was the distinction between the current HBO options and products you can go for. So if you already have HBO as part of your cable package, you can access HBO Go at no additional cost. It's the smart TV app, wireless device version of HBO with obviously like on-demand content.
Right.
Whereas HBO Now was just the version, as far as I understood it, the version of HBO Go you would get, but you paid for it separately because you already weren't paying for HBO in your cable package.
Or you didn't have a cable provider.
Or
Went
that
straight through your device.
Yeah, exactly. So, as far as I understood it, there was not a significant or really much of any difference in content provided.
No, none.
To that. So, in looking at it through that lens, I kind of get what Mike is saying in that if I can access HBO Go for essentially free because I'm paying for it through my cable provider, why not just give me all the content that you're dumping onto HBO Max on HBO Go? And then people who don't have HBO through cable can still have HBO Now and get all the same stuff. They didn't necessarily need a separate new branded product that made this distinction. Just put it on both of those. If you already get HBO through cable, you now get all this other stuff added. If you're doing HBO Now, or rebrand HBO Now as HBO Max,
which is going to happen. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Exactly. But
they're just not adding anything in for people that subscribe to HBO through the cable providers that I for whatever reason,
that they didn't make
dealing with them or didn't make the deals.
I think
with.
what Ian was like, that's distribution deals, because I was reading about that today, where HBO made deals with certain providers to allow that content. Comcast is not on that list for whatever reason. They can't make a deal with Comcast to allow that to happen. So that's between the two companies trying to work it out, and it might just be because Comcast got their own streaming service they're trying to get off the ground, which is going to be included in their cable service.
Their streaming service that they include, it's called X1.
No, the Peacock.
X5.
The NBC Universal.
Oh, you're talking the NBC thing. Okay. That's different.
That's going to be part of Comcast. So whenever that is released.
Nonetheless, I just don't see the need. Why is HBO making a separate streaming service out of what they already have, though, is what I don't understand. And why is the new content, if they want to have that separate streaming service so that people can access things like The Office and Rick and Morty and all that stuff, that's fine. Why not include any of the new content that you're making for HBO Max as part for the people that just have the standard subscription? That's the same price and whatnot that you would be asking for of the people that are on HBO Now or on the cable providers that are out there. But all they would have to do is put that, the Snyder Cut and the Game of Thrones show and all that onto HBO as is.
But they're putting on HBO Max, and if you're with certain providers, you get it. So once again, it's like a Comcast issue. It's not HBO's fault.
This was a dumb fucking idea, is my point.
No, they're bringing in a new streaming service. Idea. That's different content.
I'm paying them for content that I can't access.
No, you're not paying them for that content.
Because they wanted to have it on a separate streaming
Therefore,
service.
You're not paying for it. You're not getting it because you're not paying for it.
Yes, I am.
No, because you don't get access to it, so you're not paying for it.
The people paying for the same exact service that I'm
because they have a different provider. Yes, they get it. It's just which
is why it's a dumb idea.
Like if you go to
so I might step in and say you guys can finish this argument when we're done recording, because I feel like this is going to keep going and we're out of time.
Fair enough.
I mean, in response to your question from a while ago, I will adhere to what I said at whatever freaking point in the past it was, that if I can't, for instance, get a free trial of HBO Max for any period of time, I will agree to sign up for the minimum amount of time that is needed so that I can watch the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, to the question of, will this get you into HBO Max? So, yeah, I think I'm with you. I think if it gets to the point where there's a free trial or something, I will at least try the free month or whatever it is, at least to watch this. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we'll see how it goes. But it's enough to get me in the door, for sure. This is something I will check out just to be able to see what it's like.
Get me to pirate the hell out of the Snyder Cut.
That is also another option.
How dare you steal money from that man?
He's getting paid either way. I'm already paying for it.
You're not paying for it. You're not paying for it. That's why you don't get it.
I'm not.
All right, winding down. We're high tension tonight, I feel like. So if you've enjoyed the show, please support us. Leave a 5-star rating and review. You want to hear more arguments like this? Check us out every other Monday on Tyrannus' Twitch channel, so that you can see Ian and Mike argue in real time on Twitch. Give us a share on social media. You can follow, subscribe, keep up the show, Spotify, iTunes, Google, Anchor, Stitcher, all that stuff. You can find us on Facebook, search Bry Guy and the Super Friends, or go to facebook.com/Bry Guy Super Friends. Leave us questions, comments, topic suggestions. You got a nickname for Josh? That's the place to do it. Hit us up on Twitter also if you want them at BG Super Friends. You can even email us nicknames at bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. I won't see them. They'll never get used, but they'll be there waiting whenever I finally decide to check it. And on behalf of Ian, Josh, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Love you guys.